Whether in centuries-old woodblock prints or modern blockbuster films, the visual identity of the Japanese samurai is anchored by a singular detail: two separate swords, one long and one short, tucked neatly into the left side of the belt. When we see this paired weaponry, collectively known as the daishō, we usually make an immediate tactical assumption. We imagine warriors plunging into chaotic battlefields, wielding a flurry of steel with a blade in each hand. The historical record shows something completely different. While highly specialized dual-wielding styles did exist, most famously taught by the undefeated swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, they were extreme outliers. The vast majority of samurai were rigorously trained to grip their primary longsword with two hands, maximizing leverage, edge alignment, and cutting power. If a warrior trained for decades to grip a single hilt with both hands, carrying a second blade was less about wielding two swords at once and more about preparing for specific, localized threats. The paired armament was a tool for the battlefield that would eventually become a rigid mechanism of the state. To trace how the daishō originated, we have to look at the massive military shifts of the Sengoku period. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, Japanese warfare moved away from elite horseback archery duels. Armies swelled with conscripted foot soldiers, and battles became densely packed infantry melees. In a crowded street skirmish, warriors needed a primary weapon they could deploy instantly while standing on the ground. This demand refined the katana. Measuring over 60 centimeters, it was thrust directly through the sash with the cutting edge facing upward, engineering a single fluid motion to draw the blade and strike simultaneously. But the katana's greatest advantage, its sweeping reach, became a fatal liability in tight spaces. You cannot effectively swing a long sword inside the narrow corridors or low-ceilinged stairwells of a Japanese castle. For those environments, samurai carried the wakizashi. Ranging roughly 30 to 60 centimeters, this shorter companion blade required minimal space to thrust and served as an instantly accessible backup if the primary sword chipped, bent, or became lodged in an opponent's armor. During constant civil war, the pairing of a long and short sword emerged from pure tactical necessity. It was an optimized survival loadout for men fighting on shifting, unpredictable terrain. The tactical utility of these weapons plummeted in the early 1600s. Tokugawa Ieyasu defeated his rivals, unified the archipelago, and established an isolationist regime that would keep Japan largely at peace for over 2.5 centuries. The shogunate immediately faced a massive logistical challenge, pacifying a highly armed populace with no remaining wars to fight. The government's first massive intervention was a nationwide campaign to aggressively confiscate swords, spears, and early firearms from the agrarian peasantry. This legally monopolized the right to bear arms and drew a permanent physical line between the working farmers and the warrior elite. With the populace disarmed, the shogunate utilized comprehensive sumptuary laws to control the victorious samurai. The ruling regime took the practical battlefield pairing of the katana and wakizashi and explicitly codified it into a mandated uniform. By law, samurai were required to wear these two specific swords on official duty or in public spaces, transitioning the blades from combat gear to a required bureaucratic dress code. This chart details the legal maximum lengths enforced by the shogunate. In 1645, the samurai longsword was capped at 84.8 centimeters, the short sword at 54.5. While wealthy merchants could carry one tiny blade, commoners were forbidden from possessing anything approaching a samurai weapon. Walking down a street carrying both a long blade and a short blade was the ultimate state-sanctioned visual indicator of aristocratic privilege. It was the absolute physical proof of an individual's supremacy within Japan's rigid caste hierarchy. Because samurai now spent their lives as literate administrators rather than active combatants, an intricate web of indoor etiquette developed to manage the constant presence of lethal weapons in domestic spaces. When entering a private residence, strict protocol demanded he immediately remove his katana. Leaving the primary weapon at the door, or placing it awkwardly on his right side, served as a mandatory physical demonstration of trust and non-aggression. However, the samurai retained the wakizashi securely in his belt, even when seated. Often referred to as the guardian of honor, the short sword physically guaranteed a core tenet of the warrior class: A samurai was never to be completely disarmed. We frequently see pop culture portrayals of samurai using these swords to casually execute peasants who spilled a drink or walked too slowly. The historical right to strike an offending commoner, known as buraiuchi, was heavily regulated. It required an immediate threat, extensive reporting to local magistrates, a period of house arrest, and independent witnesses. If government investigators deemed the killing unjustified, the samurai faced property confiscation, ruin for his family line, or execution. The shogunate designed the law so the psychological threat of the sword maintained order, keeping actual violence exceedingly rare. As the daily need to draw blood vanished, the daishō gained immense spiritual gravity. Forged by smiths practicing intense Shinto purification rituals, the highly decorated blades were believed to possess their own divine spirits. The two swords served as the physical and spiritual anchor tying a peaceful class of bureaucrats back to their fierce martial ancestry. In 1853, the arrival of a heavily armed American fleet commanded by Matthew Perry brutally exposed the technological lag of the isolated Tokugawa regime. The government collapsed and imperial rule was restored. The new Meiji oligarchy looked at the traditional samurai armies equipped with swords and outdated matchlocks and recognized a severe economic and military impediment. A feudal warrior caste sitting atop the social pyramid was incompatible with building an industrialized nation-state capable of repelling Western powers. The central government dismantled the samurai class, stripping away their hereditary stipends. The fatal blow arrived on March 28, 1876, with the Haito-rei, or Sword Abolishment Edict. The legislation explicitly prohibited the former samurai from carrying their weapons in public, reserving the right strictly for conscripted, modern military personnel. The Haito-rei acted as the forced application of the samurai's very identity. By banning the blades, the Meiji government erased the primary physical marker that had defined the warrior's social existence for generations. This profound disenfranchisement pushed conservative factions to a violent breaking point, culminating in the bloody Satsuma Rebellion of 1877. In a final desperate conflict, traditional fighters armed with their ancestral daishō charged against a modern, conscripted imperial army, equipped with rifles and gatling guns. The rebellion was utterly crushed. The age of the sword ended decisively on the battlefield, and master swordsmiths across Japan were soon forced to forge farming plows and kitchen cutlery just to survive the economic fallout. The paired swords of the samurai began as a brutal, practical response to the chaos of close-quarters warfare. Under a pacified state, they were deliberately mutated into legal instruments of social stratification, drawing a sharp metallic line between the rulers and the ruled. Long after their tactical utility faded, the daishō transcended its own obsolescence, securing its place as the enduring, global symbol of the samurai identity.